Alesia, Caesar's great siege that broke Gaul. I thought we had trapped the Gauls at Alesia. Then the hills around us began to move. One moment, we were building our lines with confidence, digging trenches and raising palisades under Caesar's orders. The next, scouts came racing in with news that a second army was closing from outside. We were not besieging one enemy anymore. We were between two. And if the wall behind us failed, if the line in front of us gave way, there would be no escape from those slopes. I was with Caesar's army in Gaul in the year 52 BCE, when the revolt spread far enough that even Rome had to take it seriously. Vercingetorix of the Arverni had done what no Gallic leader had managed for long. He pulled tribes together under one command, used cavalry, and scorched earth to deny us supplies, and forced Caesar to chase him across difficult country instead of fighting on Roman terms. We had already seen how dangerous that kind of war could be. This time Caesar wanted a single decision, one battle that would end the resistance. Vercingetorix chose Alesia, a fortified height that rose above the surrounding land. The site, as we knew it then, looked strong enough to hold an army and steep enough to punish an attacker. Caesar would later describe it in his own account, but standing there, I did not need his words to understand the problem. The Gauls had taken the high ground, and they had food inside for only so long. If we sealed them in, hunger would do what direct assault might not. So Caesar did not waste men on a blind attack. He ordered siege works. We dug a line of fortifications around Alesia to trap the defenders inside. Then, because everyone expected a Gallic relief army, he ordered a second line facing outward, a ring to protect us from the countryside behind. It was a vast job. We cut trenches, raised ramparts, planted sharpened stakes, and set traps in the ground. The whole army became laborers. Legionaries who had marched as soldiers spent their days with shovel and pick, while engineers marked out camps, watch posts, and connecting walls. The work had a purpose beyond construction. Caesar was turning terrain into a weapon. Inside the inner line, Vercingetorix could not come down the hill without fighting through us. Outside the outer line, any relief force would have to attack uphill against prepared Roman defenses. If either side broke through, the other ring still stood. It was a hard answer to a hard problem, and it showed why Roman discipline mattered as much as Roman swords. But siege lines are never just walls. They are logistics. They are food counts, water, wood, rope, and men who must stand guard day and night. We had to hold a long perimeter, and every extra ditch meant another weak point to defend. Caesar spread the legions across the line, placed camps at intervals, and kept the cavalry ready for sudden movement. The Gauls inside watched us build their cage, and from the walls they shouted down at us as if the earth itself might rise to rescue them. Then the relief army came. At first it was only rumor, then smoke on the horizon, then riders arriving with breathless reports from the outer country. A great Gallic force had gathered. Though the exact number was never clear to me and may have been exaggerated even then. What mattered was not the count but the pressure. Suddenly Caesar's plan was tested exactly where he had feared. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix had thousands of fighters. Outside, another army was forming to smash through our outer line. We were no longer simply containing the enemy. We were being squeezed. The first probes were sharp and local. Cavalry tried the weak places. Infantry followed in waves. From my section of the line, I could hear shields knocking, spears hitting timber, and men shouting orders over the noise of axes and stones. Caesar moved along the works himself, or at least that was the impression we got from the stream of messengers and officers carrying his instructions. He knew that the Roman line would only hold if every man understood the shape of the fight. Vercingetorix also began to press from inside. That was the danger of Alesia. The inner ring was not facing a trapped and passive enemy. It was facing a commander who knew the outer army was coming and understood that timing mattered more than courage. If he struck at the same moment as the relief force, We could be forced to divide ourselves too thin. So he sent out attacks on our inner fortifications while the outer force tested the far side, trying to catch us rotating reserves from one ring to the other. I remember the work of passing from one danger to the next. Men ran with shields overhead. Centurions shouted to close gaps. Loose stones rolled under our feet. The trenches mattered more than any speech. In some places, the ground dropped away. In others, it leveled just enough for a charge. Caesar had chosen the site well for defense, but there was no perfect line. There were always stretches where the men on the wall could see dust rise before they saw the enemy. The relief force attacked in stages. First came cavalry, then infantry, then heavier assaults where they tried to fill the ditches with brush, earth, and bodies. We met them with javelins and arrows, then with sword and shield when they reached the ramparts. The inner defenders matched the pressure with sorties from Alesia, and for a moment it felt as if the whole hill were alive with movement. But the Roman works held because they were layered. A man could fall back from one ditch to the next. A breach in one spot did not mean collapse everywhere. Still, we were stretched. Food was becoming a problem. The siege had gone on long enough that rationing was no longer a choice, but a necessity. Caesar had brought us to Alesia because he believed speed would favor Rome, yet speed had turned into endurance. That is what sieges do. They strip a battle down to men, timber, and will. Then the crisis came in the form of a coordinated assault. The Gallic relief army found what they believed was a weaker sector of our outer works, a stretch where the ground and the fortifications seemed less favorable for us. At the same time, the men inside Alesia pushed harder. Their signal fires and shouting told us they had heard the same news from the hills. Help was close. It changed their calculation. A trapped army can become more dangerous when it thinks rescue is near. The attack hit with everything the Gauls had left. From the outside, masked warriors came up through the ravines and against the ditches, trying to crowd our defenses until they could climb the palisades. From inside, Vercingetorix's men pressed the inner line, forcing our comrades there to fight with their backs toward the siege wall and their eyes on two fronts at once. Dust rose so thick it blurred the slope. Horns sounded from one side, then the other, and for a while no one could tell which line would fail first. Caesar committed reserves where they were needed most. That was the difference. He did not chase every alarm. He shifted troops by the shortest path, reinforced the threatened sector, and let the fortifications buy time for the legions to arrive where the pressure was highest. Roman discipline mattered here in a way that would be hard to explain to anyone who has never stood in a line and waited for orders while enemy men are already climbing toward you. We did not break formation just because the noise was unbearable. We held, and then we countered. The turning point came when Caesar, or his officers under his plan, sent cavalry and infantry around to strike the attacking Gauls at the moment they were most exposed. The outer force had climbed far enough to be tired, packed together, and unable to retreat quickly. Once our counterattack hit, their momentum failed. I saw men on the slope turn sideways, trying to find a gap where there was none. Some fell back over the ditches they had just crossed. Others were cut down where they stood. The attack lost shape, and once that happened, it was over. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix must have seen it. The men on the wall stopped cheering. Their pressure eased, and their formations began to thin. The relief army outside had not broken us. Worse for them, it had spent itself against prepared lines and Roman reserves. By the time the final assault collapsed, the whole Gallic plan had come apart. There was no clean path through our works, no quick rescue from the hills, no second chance. After that, the battle changed from fighting to surrender. Vercingetorix understood the situation before any of us did. He had led a major coalition, held us in check, and forced Caesar into one of the hardest sieges of the war. But at Alesia, the numbers, the walls, and the Roman system all worked against him at once. With the relief force beaten and his own men exhausted inside the fortifications, he had no way out. The surrender itself was remembered because it marked the end of the struggle, not because it was dramatic in the way men imagine such moments. Caesar received Vercingetorix, and the Gallic leader laid down his arms. That image would travel farther than the battlefield did. It became the face of Roman victory in Gaul. We had spent days digging, marching, carrying fascines, repairing gaps, and fighting across ditches and ramparts. In the end, all of it had been about one thing: making sure the enemy could not turn numbers into freedom. For us, the immediate aftermath was practical. We counted the wounded, repaired the works, and watched the prisoners and survivors move under guard. For Gaul, it was larger than one defeat. Alesia broke the coalition that Vercingetorix had built and showed every remaining tribe that Rome could outlast them, surround them, and defeat them even when the odds seemed reversed. Caesar's own account made the victory look clean and controlled, but I was there enough to know how close the line was, how much depended on trenches, timing, and men who kept standing when they had every reason not to. Alesia was not just a Roman victory. It was the moment Gaul learned that Caesar could win by patience, engineering, and refusal to yield. Alesia showed that in Rome's wars, walls and discipline could decide the fate of an entire land.